seeming like superhero movies and TV shows will be coming and going to the very heat death of the universe and now seemingly multiverse, it seems that we've gotten both good and bad ones. With it seeming like the DCEU is coming to its conclusion, it seems like it's a good time to look back at it. And while I won't be doing that right now, I will be looking back at something vaguely related to it. Now, from what it looked like the best of the DCU, unless you're a Snyder fan, which just gonna say that I'm not, what really worked best was Wonder Woman. The first one, not so much the second one, but the other topic though, because Wonder Woman is a superhero who weirdly hasn't been around all that much. I mean, she's been around since almost the very start of DC itself. Debuting all the way back in October 1941 in All-Stars Comics number 8, Wonder Woman has been around since the golden age of DC, that being during the World War II era, which I kind of mentioned in my Batman video where things were a little bit weird, and they certainly weren't not weird for Wonder Woman. God, have you heard of Egghead? Well, how about Egg Foo, this giant Japanese egg, which was brought back in semi-recent times and looks horrible. Superheroes are weird. But that's sort of why we love superhero stuff. At least I love superhero stuff for being weird, and certainly the 1970s Wonder Woman is very, very weird. Now, Wonder Woman hasn't had too many adaptations, but the most notable of them is this 1970s show, which we're now going to talk about today.
Wonder Woman! Wonder Woman!
One of the most prolific superhero shows of its time, it was very, very important for what superheroes would become, ultimately bringing in several ideas from the comics themselves, but also just introducing a lot of its own ideas. And it's been important due to the fact that it's one of the only ways people really see Wonder Woman. This and the more recent movie, which was, I don't know, 30 years after this show, or longer even, God, are the two adaptations of Wonder Woman people really know. There's only been a failed one, and animated stuff. While she is a feature character in a few of those, which is still great, and she's great in those shows, God knows what really happened to Wonder Woman on her own. So unless we're looking at the recent movie, the 1970 show is the most we have out of Wonder Woman. So, the real question remains, how is it? Hey there. Now, while the irony is not lost on me that I have a Marvel shirt on and I have a Marvel poster behind me, I am a DC fan. Well, not as big of a fan of DC as I am Marvel. I do really enjoy DC characters, hell, superheroes in general. And Wonder Woman certainly is one of those characters. She's just this cool Amazonian lady with a magical whip, an invisible jet, and can just beat your ass. She's so strong that she'd go right up against Superman, and I feel like it would make sense. Not that I think superhero fights even need to be a thing, and whenever you hear about them online, especially when they involve Batman, they make me want to die. But that being said, Wonder Woman is cool, and it's weird that we've not gotten any other adaptation besides this 1970s show. Now, as we're going through the Arrowverse, I of course am going through all the things that are involved in said Arrowverse, all to get any other hidden references that may come throughout it. This is the most tangentially related thing that is involved in the Arrowverse, with the 70s Wonder Woman only having a quick panel appearance in a comic book related to the event, like, multi-episode thing, which we'll talk about a while from now. So it's weird that we're talking about this show. Well, that panel is enough of a reason to get into the entirety of this show. It, like the Batman show we mentioned a few weeks ago, is a very fun and weird show, and though I didn't grow up with it, I did grow up knowing about it and people referencing it. Mostly the whole spinning thing, which is all people really remember from this show. Sure, also the part that she, like, blocks bullets with her gauntlets and such. It's just like, okay, those are the two things, and that's apparently it. And I, besides seeing her on Justice League Unlimited, I didn't know too much about Wonder Woman, and I really did know about this show. But now I do, after watching all of it. And let me tell you, God, is it weird.
Wonder Woman! Wonder Woman!
Getting into some background now, it was made on November 7th, 1975 and ran all the way till September 11th, 1979. A good 4-year run, it went for 3 seasons, each of which changed the show greatly. Starring Lyle Wagner as Steve Trevor, who at that point was a sex icon, and the then 24 Linda Carter as Wonder Woman. God's sakes, 24? I should really start getting writing those novels. Despite the muted ratings of the earlier Kathy Lee Crosby television pilot, which by the way exists, they tried to make a pilot with this being Wonder Woman. I don't know why. ABC still felt like Wonder Woman was a series that has potential, and within a year another pilot was in production. Keen to make a distinction from the last pilot, producers gave the pilot the rather paradoxical title, The New Original Wonder Woman. Scripting duties were then given to Stanley Ralph Ross, who was instructed to make the thing more comic book faithful and also create a subtle high comedy to be a little bit more aware of itself. Not in the, like, modern way of aware of itself, but you know. Ross, of course, has set the pilot in World War II, the era which the original comic books began, and the thing that is the easiest comic books to find from this point, and also the best one that people would know what exactly Wonder Woman is. Keep on, at this point, Wonder Woman was kind of looking like a fashion model, and was a fashion model creating her own clothes, because she kind of stopped being a superhero in the same way she was for a little bit. Comics are weird. And the most memorable aspect of the show is the sequence where Diana Prince, who would be her alter ego, would change back into Wonder Woman. Or Diana Prince turning into Wonder Woman, depending on if you like to call these superheroes by their regular person names, which is weird. No, I refuse to call Batman Bruce Wayne, or just Bruce. He's Batman. Even when he's not doing Batman things, that's Batman. Employing a slow fade between two synchronized shots and filmed with overcranked camera to create a slow motion effect, the twirling Diana Prince's hair would fall loose, and the shot transitioned to a twirling Wonder Woman holding Diana's clothes. She kind of just put them wherever she wanted, and presumably would have to find them later, which we never get to see, but that would have been funny. The series began at a time when violence on television was under intense scrutiny, certainly with the fact that the series has a main character who is a female, and God knows the people back in the 70s would have been like, oh my, that's too much! And while she is not too much seen doing it, she does the occasional punch or a kick, mostly just throwing things at people though. Sometimes like knocking things out of the air or out of the water. One of which, by the way, was when she sinked a German U-boat, which probably killed everyone on it. So eventually, as the show continued onward, it changed to allow a little bit more violence, a little bit more spy themes, and the modern day setting was when they started the show in season 2. Lyle Wagner now played the son of the character he had just been playing, which basically stopped them from ever doing any romantic angle because Steve Trevor was Diana Prince's boyfriend, and it would be weird for her to be like, you're his son? It ultimately made Lyle Wagner's character slowly fade out of the show, and by the end of season 3, he kind of just stopped being as important and was about to be replaced by a monkey. It was slowly being replaced by a talking computer though, which had full sentience and totally knew who Diana Prince was and that she was Wonder Woman, which was kind of just funny that it could put 2 and 2 together because it was probably just watching the show. However, it didn't tell anybody because why would it? It also had a robot dog companion that would help out Diana sometimes, I guess. The show got very weird. But yes, as the show went on, not only would it get more spy-like and more detective show-like, but season 3 would then go into weird plots which would be like, we gotta talk about modern day subjects like football and the skateboard. Though the show, regardless of how weird the concept would get, would stay consistent in its quality. The show mostly began to change stuff in terms of Diana's look, as it gave her more designs and more costumes, each of which for different situations, which all kind of looked snazzy. You know, if you're gonna put Linda Carter in a swimsuit for the sake of whatever reason, good. Good. It has been like 30 years since this thing, and that woman is still absolutely gorgeous. So, I don't care. Alongside spy suits and spy robots, what was the show really about, and why was it so weird? Well, let me tell you about some of my favorite episodes and some of the weird stuff that happens in this show.
Wonder Woman, Wonder Woman.
Season 1, the pilot is this hour-long episode, which is honestly your pretty basic Wonder Woman origin story. I mean, it's, you know, it's literally what you saw in the movie, if you've seen the movie, of course. Steve Trevor finds himself on Paradise Island, as it was called during this time. I'm not entirely sure when Themyscira becomes Themyscira. I'll put that on screen, you know, when I read about that later. Should have did that during scripting, you know. However, it was Paradise Island mostly during the golden age of times, and thus it is called this in this show. That being said, Steve Trevor finds his way there, and despite the fact that the women on here, who aren't quite like the Amazonian warrior culture as they are in more modern times, they're like, oh, get him out of here. Which Wonder Woman ultimately goes, you know what? I will be the one who will bring him there, after she tricks her mom in pretending that she isn't her, and then wins these like games, which are very similar to the Olympic Games, and also involve blocking bullets. Honestly, it would have been funny if any of the other people were to do that. We watch a whole other show with a whole other lady, and Wonder Woman's show is just her sitting on Paradise Island going, man, I'm bored. But we very soon get the like origin of the invisible plane, which is basically just a balloon that they put in and they just flew around, which is just kind of funny looking and isn't used too much as the show goes on. But I just love the invisible plane. It's just the weirdest idea in comics to me. I just love seeing it whenever it's represented, except in the movie. I'm gonna stop pooping on 84, but all right. The first two episodes are weirdly adaptations of comic book storylines involving Baroness von Gunter and Fausta, the Nazi Wonder Woman, in which, weirdly enough, the second episode there shows that chloroform works on Wonder Woman, which is a note that I wrote down and just wanted to note that chloroform works on Wonder Woman, which is just weird that that's one of her weaknesses. Find out that what really makes up Wonder Woman's gear is femininium, which is only on Paradise Island, which is soon found by the Nazis, who basically totally take over Paradise Island. I like to imagine, due to the fact that we see it later on in the comics, which we'll definitely get to later, that the Amazons here become a warrior culture again after being invaded by Nazis very, very successfully. Also during this time, Hippolyta, Wonder Woman's mom, is played by the original Morticia Addams, which is just kind of funny that she just changed actresses and it was her. Weirdly enough, the next episode doesn't really have anything special. It's just the fact that there's a giant ape in it, and its effects look awful. The seventh episode, The Plutophile, brings up these blueprints that make earthquake machines. I just wanted to bring this up because so many shows have earthquake machines, as we'll see as we go on. It's a thing. It's a weirdly a recurring trope that a lot of shows have earthquake making machines. Why are there so many of these? Why are there so many of these in these shows? Why? Well, the last few episodes are just kind of alright. There is one next two-parter that involves aliens who come down to Earth to judge humanity. Wonder Woman speaks on half of humanity and is basically able to convince them to go away and come back in 50 years, which will be around the point of 1992, which we never really get that follow-up, at least not completely. As mentioned, season 2, now in modern days, a little bit more Charlie's Angel-y, and involves weird, more modern topics, including androids. There is 3 episodes that involve androids, one of which looking exactly like Wonder Woman. How a person was able to do that, I don't know. It's apparently really easy to build robots that look like people in comic books. I'm surprised that isn't used all that often, besides that they look like big creature robots in comic books, but God, wow. Speaking of things that are also in comics a lot, clones, Hitler clones specifically, which happens in the second episode of season 2. Why a clone of Hitler? I don't know. Listen, even weird enough, a psychic man who's probably entirely in the right as he tries to go on a spree because he wants revenge for people putting the Japanese in internment camps. Now, he does go about it wrong. He's certainly not completely in the right in this episode, but also, damn, the show got very, very serious real quick, which immediately throws it away by suddenly people, probably using research left over from the Nazis finding it, basically nearly go around and find Paradise Island, to which Wonder Woman, under the guise of the fact that it's near the Bermuda Triangle, has to get them lost without murdering them. If that's a little bit too dark for you, how about evil rock star who uses a magical flute? Okay, there's an episode where Princess Diane. There's an episode where she gets married, mostly in a ruse to try and find a person who's been hypnotizing people by massaging them. The aliens are back in a 2-parter, episodes 10 and 11, as a Darth Vader ripoff villain is hunted by Andros and his people, who basically threaten the world if they don't find him and give him up. As if the world in general would know about the fact that there's an evil alien on there and that they've been there before. Like, excuse me? Episodes in this show, and probably more in general, but mostly 2 that are very specific, one of which involves talking to a dolphin, where it shows up that Wonder Woman has animal telepathy, which is the weirdest power she has, and I don't think she has it in the comics. Again, put that on screen if I'm wrong. Now, if the Bermuda Triangle being vaguely real in its mysticism isn't enough for you, how about also a portal that exists within the Pacific Ocean that is bringing kids from an alternate dimension who are the police of their planet? Eldest thing in this show, that there is an alternate dimension which portal is in the Atlantic Ocean. But now you know the same information that I do. Finally, in season 3, a lot of the plots revolve around more modern topics involving skateboarding and football and this, like, Phantom of the Opera-esque thing, but about a roller coaster where this man has been gravely disfigured and wants revenge via roller coaster. Listen, these plots don't make sense. An ant-themed costumed villain, which is one of the only times a real costumed villain shows up in this show. I'd like to imagine maybe that would have continued onward in season 4. I don't know, because these things really do get wild when Roddy McDowell turns people into statues through hypnosis, and a billionaire who puts his brain in a jar alongside his eyeball stem just on it and tries to take control over an Olympian. Which, look at this guy. That's the weirdest thing. Weirder than an episode about Wonder Woman singing, who's just singing stuff from Linda Carter's real-life album that just actually existed at that time. And this episode was purely made to promote said album. Yeah, there are two-parters in the last third season, that being an episode which is basically an episode that is the Body Snatchers movies, but like with Wonder Woman and her friends get body snatched, and she's helped by this little child who basically finds out who Diana Prince is. And that's weirdly the crux of the episode goes on. Then the kid just forgets at the end of the story, as if it was like, cool. What was the point there? With the second episode, of course, being the Phantom of the Roller Coaster. Now, the very last episode was shown before that two-parter, with that two-parter being the last 2 episodes ever aired. However, the real last episode that was ever made is the real last episode, which, as I mentioned before, is Wonder Woman deciding that she's going to move away after defeating a man who has this invincibility formula, who nearly wants to turn people into this army of invincible mutant men. And through doing that, she's able to get the help of his invincible little chimp, which would have became her new sidekick, aside the sassy computer and the little robot dog thing. So the show would have gotten even weirder, honestly. There is, of course, a comic book series that was made for this called Wonder Woman 77. With that being said, a lot of it's pretty good. It introduces newer, sort of 70s versions of the characters, but due to the way that the comic book was written, it feels a little bit more like a regular comic book, rather than an actual, like, comic book version of the show. You know, the way the show was shot was very much how a TV show was shot at the time, which is the reason why certain characters look the way they were and fight the way they do. While this really just feels like a comic book. However, there is now Wonder Woman 77 versions of several characters like Cheetah, Celsius, weirdly enough, Batman villain she fights Solomon Grundy and Clayface in this. There's some hypnotizing band here and there. The Brain Guy returns in one thing. She saves a disco band from the KGB. There's a giant sea worm in one of the things. And there's also 2 crossovers with 2 other shows, one of which being Batman, the other which being The Bionic Woman. I am now going to explain the Bionic Woman in a very short time.
We can rebuild him. We have the technology. But I don't want to spend a lot of money.
So due to the comic crossover being a thing, this means that the entirety of the Bionic Woman, and alongside that, the show that it spun off from, that being the $6 Million Man, exists within the Wonder Woman 77 universe. The $6 Million Man was based on Martin Caden's 1972 novel Cyborg, following the 3 television films intended to be as pilots, all of which aired in 1973. The $6 Million Man aired on ABC as a regular episodic show for 5 seasons from 74 to 78. It starred Lee Majors as Steve Austin, not that Steve Austin that we know about more, but about a man in the Air Force who, after a big accident, was given an experimental cyborg enhancement treatment that costed around $6 million, which in modern money is $40 million. Oof. In 75, a 2-part episode titled The Bionic Woman showed the main character rekindling an old romance with Jamie Summers, a professional tennis player who ultimately, after an accident, had to get her own bionic parts. God knows how much money that cost inflation is the real villain in this series, but in truth, though she died in that episode, she didn't really, because the character was so popular they went, give her her own show. It lasted as long as $6 Million Man did, ending around the exact same time, but weirdly on a different network. Despite the different network, the two shows did cross over occasionally, and are clearly set in the same universe. Funnily enough, they were about to make a third show about a cyborg dog, whose characters did show up in The Bionic Woman. His name is Max, and he's great. The show, yes, is indeed the show that does have the Andre the Giant played giant cyborg Sasquatch, which also appeared in The Bionic Woman, and another time in The $6 Million Man. Yes, not just one time, but like multiple. And also, it's from aliens. Nobody mentions that, but it is from space. Why? There's not too much to really mention about the show specifically, besides that there's multiple people making evil robots that exist in this show, specifically the fembots. The show is actually your typical 1970s weird action show. While certainly it's overdramatic as all hell, and besides the multiple crossover episodes, things go your typical weekly weird problem of the week type thing, where one of your two main cyborg characters has to deal with it. Later on, they would attempt to reboot the series in several ways. 1987 would bring the return of the $6 Million Man and the Bionic Woman. Later on in 89 would be Bionic Showdown, the $6 Million Man and the Bionic Woman, both of which were trying to spin off into new shows involving new bionic people, one of whom was played by Sandra Bullock in one of her first roles. It would have been cool to see new shows, but they ended up kind of just giving up by the end with Bionic Ever After in 1994, which finally saw these two characters that probably should have gotten married like 30 years ago chronologically, finally get married. With 3 pilot movies and 99 episodes of Bionic Man and 58 episodes of Bionic Woman, alongside those 3 specials afterwards, there's quite a bit of the show, which I wouldn't say you need to watch to fully understand the crossover comic, which is really just the two of them meeting up, Diana weirdly telling the Bionic Woman that she is who she is, and them alongside Max teaming up with the Amazons, whom have been learning how to do actual Amazon things, whom are now riding kangaroos, which is what they did in the comics. It's just weird to see it here. And they fight this team of neo-Nazis who now remember that they had found Paradise Island one time, and they team up with some of the people who made the robots in both shows to make this robot Nazi army to fight the Amazons, who have now all geared up. Damn, look how cool Wonder Woman looks in this. But yes, I just wanted to quickly mention this fact for posterity's sake, on the fact that, yeah, I'm going over every aspect of the Arrowverse, even when it barely connects, and it's just a quick little crossover that nobody really needed to take that seriously.
Holy rusted metal, Batman!
Huh?
The ground, it's all metal, it's full of holes, you know? Holy!
Oh.
Now, the Batman crossover is really where it's at. The Batman crossover, of course, crosses over directly with Batman 66. The comic book we only went over a little bit because, in general, it's not all that fantastic. However, the crossover here is a lot more interesting. This shows off that the entire time both shows exist in the same universe. And we'll get to what I think about that in a second, but the point being, it's cool that Batman was vaguely inspired by Wonder Woman, seeing her beat up some Nazis, and also the evil wizard man, that is Ra's al Ghul, as Batman had a relationship with Talia al Ghul, who's not in any Batman 66 involved property, but it's cool that there was this multi-year long sort of romance with the two characters that sort of come together at the end of this comic, which goes through the ages, showing a younger Bruce when he was a kid, and also Bruce Wayne Batman teaming up with Wonder Woman, him knowing who she is, them going to Paradise Island, going through this maze of monsters and stuff, which is weird that that is also a thing now, that Batman fought a Cyclops, for them to get to the Lazarus Pit that just happened to exist on Paradise Island, which allows Ra's al Ghul to once again be a younger man. For those who don't know what a Lazarus Pit is, look it up online. Point is, it's goop that makes you young, and that's what I'll go with for now until we get to Arrow. But it works, and it skips years later, and the cool part about this is it finally gives some kind of like epilogue to Adam West Batman's, because it shows that he, years later, in one of several versions of Batman, because this is for some reason a thing that multiple Batmen have done, have retired after leading to the death of Joker. Now leaving the superheroing to Dick Grayson, who is not just Robin now, but of course is Nightwing, who looks pretty cool, and is teamed up with Catwoman, who at this point, years later, has fully redeemed herself and is now fighting crime. This leads me to think that indeed the Huntress that we saw in League of Superheroes is indeed indeed the daughter of Bruce Wayne, Adam West Batman. So that's what I'm going with now. However, Bruce Wayne has to once again suit up into Batman after he finds out that Ra's al Ghul is back and he's causing some major troubles, and they gotta stop him from getting to the big Lazarus pit that happens to be under Gotham, because there is one for some reason. He ends up not being able to stop Ra's al Ghul, but Ra's al Ghul ends up getting stuck in there and goes all the way back to being a baby, which is kind of messed up, honestly. This shows us not only a very neat epilogue to Adam West's Batman as a character, him kind of having this nice little ending and showing off that he would later live a normal life, but also it shows you that potentially that dog that Dick Grayson is walking in the little Arrowverse cameo might be the dog from the Bionic Woman. That's what I'm going with, by the way. Just saying. And that Max is the Adam West version of Ace the Bat Hound? That's what I'm going with. That's my one fan theory for you. However, more importantly, we do get the little cool fact of these shows exist in the same universe. However, there's a problem here.
Wonder Woman, Wonder Woman.
Both things are shown to be entirely separate universes, right? How can this be possible? One's in Earth 77 and one's in Earth 66. Well, obviously, we'll get to it later on, but the whole Crisis on Infinite Earths thing merges multiple universes together in the, main current TV shows into one universe. So who says it didn't happen for other shows, right? Recently, we got this fact that apparently the two movie franchises we'll get to very soon, the Burtonverse Batman and the Christopher Reeves Superman universe, both exist now in the same universe when they also originally didn't. So who says not only did they merge together for that whole thing to happen, but also that these two universes just merged together and now exist in one where both histories have always happened, which now post-Crisis means that the watch order of both of these shows is the first season of Wonder Woman with its 13 episodes, and then the whole show of Batman, and then also right in the middle of it being Green Hornet, and then afterwards in the 70s is the two last seasons, 24 and 22 respectively. So there you go. With the Batman comics being right before Wonder Woman, and also the first half of their crossover, and then those second two seasons, and then the second half of their crossover. So that's the whole thing there. Once again, not mentioning all of the other shows that also seemingly exist in the exact same universe. Thanks, TV, for having weird crossovers. But more importantly, for our Arrowverse watch through, the next part of the watch order, if you don't want to make it complicated, is just the 59 episodes, technically 60 if you make the pilot two separate parts, episodes of the 70s Wonder Woman, with a little bit of comics that can be read shortly afterwards, and presumably the crossover comics be read after both shows, this one and Batman, majorly. For me, personally, love the 70s Wonder Woman. It is a strange and fun and wild show, which I would absolutely recommend. Sure, it's not some kind of big action-packed special effects involved show, but it's got a lot of personality and a lot of wit to it, which I just absolutely love from it. It's what I love about superhero comic book based stuff, right? It's weird, it's wacky, and it doesn't try to take itself too seriously, while allowing the story to be well written enough that you can take it seriously enough to get invested into the characters, enough to watch the weirdness that is this show. It's got some wild concepts in it that just a lot of shows at this time didn't have. Where did you see Brain with eyeball stem taking over a guy? That's crazy. But Wonder Woman is a very enjoyable show regardless, and if you're going to at least watch anything of this earlier days of stuff vaguely involved in the Arrowverse, but not really, I would have to recommend the 70s Wonder Woman. I mean, after all, what is there, right? There hasn't been anything since. After this, it took us 30-40 years to finally get a new adaptation of Wonder Woman. There is the animated movie, which is really good, which is really just the movie later on, but in animated form, and I think kind of better due to that, and her really cool and very well done appearances in other shows, but nothing that really spotlights her besides that animated movie. And also the failed 2011 pilot. Very quickly, I just want to mention, you can find it online, and I would recommend finding it. It's not, I can't place it anywhere. Personally, maybe we could just pretend that this also exists in the, like, main Earth 1 of the Arrowverse, where Arrow and the Flash take place, and there just is a Wonder Woman there doing her own thing. You know what happens in that was going to be show? In this show, Diana is Diana Themyscira, and she has this company which is specifically made to do Wonder Woman stuff. I don't know what they make besides Wonder Woman merchandise, which apparently the people in the, like, main headquarters have no idea what they're doing. It feels very heavy-handed in the way that they write these characters, so it's clear why people didn't really like it all that much. And the Wonder Woman in it, while I kind of like her outfit, to which I mean I really like her outfit, is very much like Arrow, and that she just beats up guys to get information once she breaks a dude's arm, but like, you got the lasso for a reason, and that reason is to not break people's arms. And it's weird how they have this character a lot, like, meaner and not like Wonder Woman. Well, it's fine to have a more, like, ready-to-fight people Wonder Woman. And if you want to get a little bit, like, adult, that's fine. Just the way they made this character and the way they wrote this show was a little bit trying too hard for its time. But honestly, probably would have liked it. It's so not good that I ended up liking it because it's not good, right? This feels like a show that would have really worked for its time, and while it wouldn't have been good and people probably wouldn't have liked it, probably would have lasted for a season, it would have been a season full of weird, trying too hard stuff that would have been funny to laugh at years later. I really wish they made this show. You can find it online. Its effects aren't finished, so you can see her jumping up on strings, but listen, totally find it online. I hope in the future we can get more Wonder Woman stuff, but for what we have, the movie I'll talk about a while from now, but the show itself, the 70s Wonder Woman, is a absolute treasure, and if you have not already watched it, I would absolutely recommend watching it. Not just for our Arrowverse watch-through order of shows that are vaguely connected, but also the fact that it's just a very fun, enjoyable show. It shows you what is really enjoyable about superhero stuff, and I will absolutely contend to that. It's very much of its time, it's maybe a little bit dated, and it's strange, certainly, but it's a fun time that's a little bit different from what we have nowadays. If you haven't already watched it, absolutely do. But, you know, if not, you can continue on to our watch order to our next thing. As we continue on to Through the Arrowverse, our next little bit of things we'll be talking about is, naturally, some movies. We'll be getting into the Richard Donner-verse of Superman movies. The original Superman, its sequel, both versions of it, and then its two other sequels after that, and then also the related Supergirl movie, which, God, I've been waiting to talk about for a while, and the yes, it's related, and I refuse to say it's not, Superman Returns, which is sort of the end of that timeline, seemingly. This is more connected to the Arrowverse as it has a direct connection to the later Crisis crossover, and also it's Superman, and I love Superman, so I can't wait to talk about it. And then while it'll be a little bit afterwards, we'll of course soon afterwards be getting into the Burtonverse, which will of course be the 1989 Batman film and its 3 sequels. And if you want to see all of that, then make sure you go ahead and subscribe. Until then, though, I've been the Movie Thunder. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope you enjoy Wonder Woman and DC stuff in general without being mean in the comments. If you did, then go ahead and leave a like and make sure you share it to every single person you know, to the point where it's annoying. But most importantly, stay good, stay safe, and don't be an asshole.